So thank you all for being here. I'm so excited about this masterclass because Karen Shire is a friend of mine. We've known each other for several years now. We're colleagues, we're friends. She's amazing. She really knows her stuff. And what she is sharing is something that we all struggle with. And I know it resonated with you guys, and that's why you're here. So let me introduce Karen. First of all, she is a midlife transformation guide, a master certified law of attraction life coach, a certified desire factor coach, an energy master, and a best-selling author. So she's talking to us tonight about 6 ways to recognize your inner critic is running the show and how to reclaim your power. And I have a self-proclaimed, I guess is the best way to say it, inner critic for sure. It's something I've struggled with since I can remember, definitely probably since teenage years. And I've done a lot of work on it. And all of Karen's materials have helped me, start breaking that down and finding ways to calm that chatter because it's like the chatter's going and it's talking to you all day long, and it's usually harsh. It's usually hurtful. It's mean things that you would never say to someone that you love, and yet we say it to ourselves. And that ends up bringing us down. It ends up making us tired. It makes us doubt ourselves and judge ourselves. And once you realize that that chatter is not you, and Karen's going to go into this about where this voice comes from and how we have picked up on that and how we've it's indoctrinated us to believing that what this voice is saying is true when it's absolutely false. And then she's also going to give us some steps, like take us through an exercise to help soothe the critic so that we can take our power back and tap into our own intuition, tap into who we really are, and know that we're unique and beautiful and that this inner critic is a lie. So, Karen, oh my goodness, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And it's been fun. Like I said, being able to meet this community. So thank you for having me. Thank you for coming tonight. And it's fun that some of you I already know, and I get to meet some more beautiful souls. And so we're gonna kind of we'll jump in. My idea for tonight is we're gonna talk about, of course, the inner critic, and I want to also share with you like six common symptoms of the inner critic. So you can kind of start to discern, when is it when I hear that little voice in my head? Is that coming from my inner critic, or is that something coming from my intuition? What's the difference? How can I tell? And then I'd like to share maybe, if you have something to jot some paper to jot things down on, that's great. We'll talk about 6 questions or 6 reflections so that when thoughts come up, you can kind of uh, ask yourself these questions and discern, where is that little voice coming from? And is that the truth of who I am or not? And then, yeah, like Sarah mentioned, I've got a few processes, and perhaps if we have time, I'll take you through kind of a little visualization exercise. And so we can learn how to take back our power, so we can learn how to befriend our inner critic and learn how to work with that little voice in our head in a positive way, in a caring and loving way. And so we'll jump in. But sometimes our inner critic or our ego mind has been running the show. We may not even know it. It's been that little voice in our head that we've heard all our life, right? And sometimes it becomes so normal and so common, we just don't realize there's another way. We don't realize that this little inner critic is kind of guiding our life instead of us guiding our life. So, um, in that internal negative chatter, like I said, just begins to feel normal. and we don't want it to feel normal. So we're going to talk about ways to recognize and ways to um, kind of overcome and like I said before, befriend the inner critic so we can start working with it a little bit and soothing it. And like Sarah said, this chatter over time, it really drains our energy and it can fatigue us. And it really, I think, really causes us to feel like we're not enough and we're not worthy. And it can lead to judgment of ourselves. It can lead to us judging other people. And being an energy master too, you'll hear me talk about lower vibrations or higher vibrations, and we all vibrate at a lower or higher level, depending on how we're feeling at any given time. And we always, of course, want to aspire to vibrate at a higher level. When that little negative Nelly is chirping in our ear, it's really hard to do that. So we'll talk about some ways to kind of bring ourselves out of that. So let's talk first about, what is that little inner critic voice? And it really comes from imprints that we took on as children, from things that we learned and beliefs that we formed. And you may or may not have heard this before, but a belief is simply thoughts that we think over and over until they become beliefs. And we form our thoughts as children, as teenagers, as adults, based on our environment around us, based on the things that other people have said to us. And as a child, of course, we get all of our information from our parents and our grandparents and our siblings and our teachers and those around us. And that's how we form our belief system. And what they say becomes our beliefs. And what we have to do over time is kind of look at those things. And as an adult, many things probably don't ring true for us anymore. So we kind of examine those and we can kind of unravel some of those things. But some of those beliefs and imprints that we developed as a child, that's where our inner critic voice comes from. And it creates disempowering and, I think more importantly, untrue whisperings of self-talk that we hear in our minds. It comes from conditioned responses based on our life experiences. It comes from self-judgment. It comes from fears and actually evolution's fight or flight responses. And it's hard coded in the little reptilian part of our brain. So it is a hard coded thing in our brain, but we can learn how to kind of undo that and change those thoughts. Yeah, but I want you to keep in mind it's got an altruistic nature, and its design is to whisper these ideas and these thoughts and these messages based on its experiences, because what it's trying to do ultimately is keep us safe. And but in effect, what that does is it keeps us comfortably stuck where we're at. So what that does is it kind of searching for the word, it kind of stifles our growth. And it kind of keeps us playing small a lot of times. It keeps us fearful of trying new things, taking a risk, doing learning new things, or whatever it is. And so what we try to do with work with the inner critic is, if we can instead, let's sit down and have a conversation with our inner wisdom and learn how to soothe the voice of that inner critic. What we can do is we can reconnect with our wisdom, we can reconnect with our intuition, and we can start to uncover those false beliefs, those stories, those patterns, those things that we've formed over time that kind of keep us stuck, keep us comfortably stuck, right? And when we're able to start listening to our intuition from that place of an awareness, we can choose to take inspired actions based on new thought patterns, new beliefs. We can choose a different way. We can choose those things that feel better to us. And so, what I'd like to do is, one of the things when I'm talking with my clients, a question that often comes up is, how do we discern the voice of our inner critic from that of our higher self? And I think the most important aspect and the very basic aspect is really to notice how you feel. If if that thought or what you just said, what just Kate rolled out of the words that you just spoke, um, the thoughts that you have, the beliefs you have, if you sit and kind of analyze them and just ask, does this feel good to me? If it doesn't feel good, it's coming from a place of lack, of lower level emotion, of lower level energy. And if it doesn't feel good, then you know it's coming from your inner critic. But if it's a belief or a thought that feels really, really good and it just fills you with excitement, you know that that thought's coming from your intuition. It's coming from your heart. It's coming from your higher source, whoever that may be for you, whether it's universe, whether it's God or goddess or Buddha or whomever that is for you. You'll know it's coming from your higher self if it fills you with joy, if it fills you with excitement, if it feels really good. So that's really the discerning thing. If that thought or belief doesn't feel good, you know it's coming from your inner critic. And then once you discern that, you can take some action. So let's start with talking about 6 symptoms of the inner critic's whisperings. And these are things that really originate from the inner critic. And the first one I want to talk about is feelings of not enoughness. So thoughts like, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, who am I to say or do that? I'm not smart enough, I'm not experienced enough. Or the thoughts like, I'm too heavy, I'm too skinny, I'm too this, I'm too that. Those are all feelings of not enoughness. And when we're in that space or when we're having those kinds of thoughts, we might be feeling misaligned. We could be feeling disconnected from our source, disconnected. Like often what I'll find when I'm disconnected is I'm not hearing my intuition as well. I'm kind of like wondering where you at because I'm not hearing you. So we might feel unbalanced and just kind of out of sorts. We may not feel worthy, and we're probably less likely to be accepting of help. We kind of put up a wall when we're not feeling worthy. We may sense a lack of trust in ourselves, or we may not trust other people or situations. And we believe that all good things always come to others, but not to us. True success for me is a pipe dream. I know it's going to happen for that person over there, but it's not going to happen for me. So when you're feeling those kinds of things and thinking those kinds of thoughts, it comes down to feelings of not enoughness, and that's a symptom of the inner critic. And again, that's the inner critic's way of trying to keep you safely in your comfort zone, is to whisper those little things to you, because if you don't expand and grow, you're going to stay safe in its experience, right? um the second symptom of when we know our inner critic's running the show is judgment, either self-judgment or judgment of others, self-doubt or worry. A lot of us are worriers. We're kind of hardwired to do that. So you kind of have to understand that when you're in that mode of worrying, that is coming from your inner critic. And you might think thoughts like, oh, I'm so stupid, or why did I do that? Or I can't do this. I can't do that new thing. Um, the thoughts or beliefs we're focusing on, those kinds of thoughts tend to induce anxiety, and they take away joy in the moment. When I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever it is, you're not going to feel joyful in those moments. So you know that it's something coming from your inner critic. And these thoughts can leave us feeling drained. We can feel negative or stuck, or often we might go into overwhelm. Um, we might hear ourselves saying, I'm so exhausted, or just kind of feel powerless to change our situation. And that's really tough, because you kind of go into this darkness where you're just feeling lack and you feel like you don't have the power to change your situation. And you really do. It's a matter of choosing different thoughts and choosing a different way. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But that's a symptom that I think is pretty common for for when the inner critic's chatter gets going. The third one is procrastination. And procrastination, it leads us to engaging in behaviors that keep us from putting ourselves out there, keeps us playing small, or filling up our day with tasks to avoid getting to the truly important things that move us forward in our dreams. We may also disengage because we're too busy, we're too tired, we're too overwhelmed, or it's too hard. So you'll see some of these kind of overlap a little bit. But the procrastination, when I was learning about this, was kind of a surprise to me. But when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, I do that. I'll hide behind a list, or you think, let's say you're working on a project and you think it has to be completely perfect before you put it out there. That's just a form of procrastination. And if you think about it at its root, procrastination is an excuse, right? We're finding excuses not to put ourselves out there. And it's that all stems from those feelings of maybe feeling not enough, maybe underlying fears. I don't want to put myself out there because maybe I'll look silly, or maybe I'll look foolish or say something wrong. So we procrastinate, and understand when we're procrastinating again, it comes from our inner critic. So the fourth symptom is what if thinking. What if they don't accept me? What if I fail? What if I get rejected? What if it doesn't work? What if I lose or leave my job and the money stops coming in? Um, that that kept me in a career path for a long time. I was in a career path and a job that just didn't light me up anymore. But I was deathly afraid of leaving because I'd had a paycheck since I was 12 years old. And the thought of going out of that environment and not having that biweekly paycheck, I had a pretty decent salary. Oh my gosh, what was I going to do? But what that does is that what if thinking will close down your ability to see the options. That in my case, I couldn't see that, money could come to you in other ways. There's other ways to make money. There's other jobs I can do. There's other things I can do. So it kind of takes away when we go down that what if journey. And normally what happens is it's not just one what if. What I found for me, it's, what if a tree falls on my house? What if, I mean, you go into all these little circles and tangents of what if energy, and it just keeps you stuck. You go into this total fear-based reaction. And again, for me, I think you just lose sight of that you do have a choice and what those choices could be. Um, Another one would be, as part of the what if thinking, is not reaching out because you want to avoid hurt or rejection. Or again, if you stay in familiar but less than ideal situations because it seems easier than the dream or the desire. When we stay stuck in a job, or we stay stuck in a relationship because that seems like the easier path, um, than the unknown on the other side of it. That all kind of links to the what if thinking that we go into. The fifth symptom, that I've found that comes up quite frequently, is fear or guilt. We often focus on our fears of the unknown. We go to the worst case scenarios instead of expecting the best to happen in any given situation. It may be difficult releasing guilt from past events, or forgiving ourselves or others. Who gets caught up in feeling guilty about past events? Um, and generally guilt is just one of those low level emotions that sometimes it's really hard to shake. I grew up as Catholic, so we'd always joke about the Catholic guilt. But it's a true thing where you feel guilty, so you don't make a decision because, for whatever reason, or you make a different decision, or you play small, or you just, you feel bad about something that happened 17 years ago that nobody but you is thinking about. So learning how to release that guilt energy is huge. Guilt is one of those, it's okay to be there for a second, but don't stay there. Okay. Same with, pretty much any fear. We might fear speaking up. Uh, or, a lot of us, we were taught to be good little girls, right? So good little girls don't speak up. Good little girls are always, nice and conciliatory and all that kind of jargon that we learned as we grew up. So it kind of kept us cocooned in a place of um, we kind of stifled ourselves. We stifled our growth, and we came to believe that little girls shouldn't do this or little girls shouldn't do that. What if I don't have enough money in the future? What if I don't, what if I lose my job? What if I have fears about the future, which keeps me from taking inspired action or keeps me from um, making different choices? And then finally, the last one I want to talk about today is defensiveness. Do you ever feel defensive? So let's say we feel ourselves getting defensive when someone offers a suggestion or advice. I used to do that. I sometimes I'd get angry. It's like, no, I've got this. I know how to do it. I was on this path of I can do this, and then someone would offer criticism or offer advice, and I get really defensive. Um, we don't want to, I would close down. I wouldn't want to hear other people's opinions. And then I would get angry easily. Or maybe those situations where we blame others for something not going our way, whether it's another person or a situation. Um, I felt that when I was in that situation with my career, where I knew I needed to do something else. I knew that career was tearing me down. Um, and wasn't filling my heart, but I was blaming it on the company. I was blaming it on, the situation when really it was me. It was me inside that needed to change. It was me inside that needed to make some different choices and change some of my beliefs and do some of my own self inner work to get myself out of that situation. So those are six symptoms that we know when we're feeling those kinds of emotions. Understand, just connect it with, oh yeah, this is my inner critic. My inner critic's doing the talking right now. And when you have that awareness, you can do something about it. Um, so now those aren't the only six, but those are the six that I hear about most often. And I would probably say those are probably the six that I've personally dealt with the most. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about them tonight. I think they're pretty common.
Karen, I wanted to thank you for laying out specifically those six symptoms
Hmm.
and say I can definitely relate to those. And I'm
For
sure
sure.
a lot of us on here can. I mean, I was like, yep, check, 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 check. But it's good to have that gauge to understand. Oh, okay. Now this gives your attention to this draws your attention to something that needs you to work with it and to pay attention. And I just like how you laid all that out. And one thing that you said, the not enoughness and the self-judgment. I mean, those are just constants for so many of us.
Mhm.
And we really think we're not enough. We really think we're not good enough. And when I really started doing this work, I was trying to figure out, like, why do I always feel that way? Like, we blow up our perceived failures and we minimize our successes. And then that inner critic sort of searches back for proof of why you know you're not enough. And then you look back and go, oh, yeah, well, I didn't get that job, or I, said the wrong thing, or I, whatever it is, didn't what you didn't do, what you feel like you failed at. And then it's like, oh, there's the proof. See, I told you were not enough. And now, and the thing that I've started telling myself is your past doesn't predict your future. And you're looking at the negatives and not the positives.
Hmm.
So that doesn't, we have to wipe that slate and just move forward. But I appreciate you laying out. That's really eye-opening to all of those things you listed, because some of them I wouldn't have thought of, like procrastination. I wouldn't
Hmm.
normally think like, oh, that's my inner critic, but it kind of is. It's like, well, am I afraid to start putting myself out there? Is that why I am putting this off? And um, it's human to be afraid. And like what you said about the inner critic is it's there to keep us safe.
Hmm.
And it's our nature to be fearful and to want to be safe. But in keeping us safe, it's actually keeping us stuck because we're afraid to put ourselves out there. So I
Yes, for
just wanted to
sure.
say I can 100% relate to everything that you've been saying. And thank you. That's such a succinct way of putting it. And I think that really hits home for me.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think, yeah, and anyone that says that they've not experienced any of these things or is just isn't aware because we all do. Nobody's had a perfect childhood or a perfect raising or every perfect interaction. It's in Sarah, like when we flip that script and think about, like you said, we go to what's wrong, what did I do wrong, instead of saying, hey, what are all the good things I've done, and start listing out those things. I'm kind, hey, I got my degree, hey, whatever it is, start thinking about all of the successes that you've had. I mean, we all have resumes, we all have accomplishments, and just even if it's just that, you go back and look at those things of, look at what I've done. Look at all the things. I did a really good job in this job. I was a really great whatever it was. And think about those. And it's kind of like the what if thinking. We go right to the worst case scenario. What if the worst thing happens? Well, what if the best thing happens? What if that could turn out way better than I even expected? It's that mind shift of, when the inner critic says, well, what if this, what if that? Oh, no, no, no. No, no, no. We're going to talk about this turning out the very best way it can turn out. um so yeah, it's so simple mind shifts, and just training our brain to think in a different way. And the first step is the awareness, which is why I like those symptoms. And like I said, there are more, but those are really common ones, and ones that I think we all kind of suffer from, at least a few of those. So,
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's training our brain. We've
mhm,
just been doing this so long. Whatever you repeat, whatever you say to yourself becomes your mantra. It affects the way that you feel, and it affects the actions that you take, which will affect what your world looks like around
mhm,
you. And we have the ability to change our brains. Like neuroscience shows us that when you repeat thoughts that are different than what you've been thinking, you create new neural pathways, and then that can become your new default. And I think that's where a lot of like the repeating mantras and things like that come in. But I'm excited to hear your tips on how we turn this around, because it's sort of a never-ending cycle, and it like it's really frustrating when
oh, for
you're
sure.
trying to figure out how.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're all human, so we'll be going up and even for a long time, and then we'll dip down, and then you go into that darkness where you're feeling like, oh my gosh. But give yourself some grace and understand that you know what? You're human and it's just a human experience, and we know how to change our thoughts and we'll bring ourselves back up. So, and it's about when you get to those down times when you're in that lack, understand it's okay. Those emotions that you're feeling are just emotions. They're just information from your body to say, hey, Sarah, there's something going on here you need to pay attention to. Hey, Carol, there's something you need to pay attention to. Um, and just understand that it's not wrong. It's just information for your body. And when you know, understand that, okay, this is what I'm feeling, then now I can do something about it. Why am I feeling this way? Where did it originate? How do I change? How do I shift that thought? So it's all interesting when you get into the study of energy and all that and how this is all interrelated. It's quite fascinating actually. So well, here's what I'm going to do. I kind of when I'm in that spiral, let's call it that spiral of lower level thoughts. Um, there's some questions that I ask myself, and they're really great journal prompts. So if you feel like jotting them down, go ahead. Um, but the first thing I ask is I'll think about a thought that comes up that I have. And again, the first thing is always, does it feel good or doesn't it feel good? And if it doesn't feel good, if there's any constriction in your body, if there's any resistance to it and it doesn't feel good, you know that it's coming from your inner critic. You might feel a constriction in a muscle, in your shoulder, in your gut, wherever that is for you. People feel things in different ways. But if you feel any constriction at all, or if there's any doubt, and just remember a little no is always a no. So if a thought comes up and it's not resonating with you in some way, know that it's probably something that you need to bring some awareness to and perhaps change your belief system, change your thought process on that. But the first specific question I always think about when I'm analyzing my thoughts is, when did this belief begin? And do I remember it from childhood? Do I remember it from others speaking it to me? You know, did a teacher say something mean to me at one point and it just stuck? Did a well-meaning parent not react to a situation in a way you probably would now? Maybe they only knew how to parent like they were taught to parent, right? And what they learned and experienced. So it could be and like I said, when did this belief begin? But if you remember it from childhood or others in your life speaking it, if you remember it from a younger age, then probably your inner critic is in control and it's trying to keep you again safely in your comfort zone because that's what your experience was. And it's trying to keep you safely within your experience. That's what the inner critic does. The second journal prompt, if you will, that I think about is, does this thought or belief I have ring true for me now? Does this thought or belief I have ring true for me now? And if not, it's time to consciously choose a different thought. And it's okay to choose a different thought. You don't have to believe what your parents believed. You don't have to believe. That's what other people told you. It's the power of choice. I mean, and that's such a great thing. We're all divinely designed. We all have our own minds and our own hearts, and it's okay to believe the way we want to believe, right? The third one is, think about the thought that comes up. And if you say it out loud, how does it make you feel? So if you're thinking, I'm so stupid, or I'm so fill in the blank, doesn't matter what it is, say it out loud and see how your body reacts. If it doesn't feel good, you're going to have a reaction and you'll know that it's coming from your inner critic. The what am I The fourth one that I have is, and we've probably all heard this, but would I lovingly repeat this thought or belief to a small child? If I hear myself saying, "Oh, you're not enough. Oh, how can you think you could do that?" Would you turn around to a 4-year-old and say those words to her? My bet is probably not. And if that's the case, please don't do that to yourself. Let's change the mantra, change to self-love. Because anything that you wouldn't say to anyone else, you shouldn't be saying to your own heart. The fifth one is this thought or belief keeping me comfortably stuck or inhibiting me from trying something new? Is it keeping me comfortably stuck? Which is a comfortable place to be sometimes. It's hard to admit that, but if we get right down to it, is it keeping me from moving? It's kind of like the procrastination thing. Are all my lists I'm making keeping me from doing the thing that really needs to be done, right? Or is it inhibiting me from trying something new? Maybe I want to learn how to paint, but I don't take the step. I don't take a painting class because I think I'm no good. I don't even try. It just keeps me in my spot. And then finally, the last one is this thought or belief inspiring to me? Does it bring me joy? If it's not inspiring and it doesn't bring you joy, it's probably coming from your inner critic. And it just bears attention. It just needs some attention. So, what I like about these journaling prompts, this exercise, is it generally, once you kind of go through that a time or two, it really gives you a deeper understanding of how the inner critic shows up for you. Some of those may be things that show up for you, and some may not. But once you have a better idea of pinpointing that, you'll know when a thought comes up like that really needs some work. Really is you're going to have probably a more visceral reaction to now that you're aware. And then just know at that point it's time to shift your energies and quiet down the chatter. So those are all just, again, they're all just keys to clue into the awareness of where's this thought coming from. And once I know and once I'm aware, it's hard to be not aware again, right? And once I'm aware, I know I can do something about it. And that's where we go into, there's processes we can do, there's inner work, there's energy work we can do to be able to soothe that inner critic so that we can start to hear our inner wisdom and our intuition more clearly and really get us on the path that we want to be on. So I don't think your mic's on, Sarah.
I forgot I muted myself. I was just going to say, I love these journal prompts because it really follows what you said. First, it's kind of like notice these symptoms. Like, what kind of
Mhm.
symptoms do you have? Do you self-judge? Do you procrastinate? Do you live in fear? Are you afraid to try new things, whatever? And then you go this is like the next step, like go a little deeper, like where did this come from? Like now your inner critic's piping up.
Mhm.
Now let's break down the exact things that it's saying so that we can start to dismantle it. It's almost like shining a flashlight into a dark room. The
Right.
door's been shut, but stuff's been going on back there that is guiding us and creating our outer world. And now we know when we need to open the door because we see the symptoms. And then this is starting to peek around in there and say, oh, okay, what's really going on? Like, where did this belief begin? And is it true now? Which, that's profound. Is this really true now? Because when you hear something as a kid, or even, sometimes it's not like someone specifically saying it. Maybe it's like message that you receive over and over again. Kind of like for my personal example, I always felt like I couldn't quite do something enough.
Hmm.
I would make an A and it would be, or I'd make, an A minus and it would be like, well, that's great, but what can you do next time? Or, like I would run a race and it would be a personal best for me. And it would be like, well, that's good, but that other girl from this school, this is what her time is. And if you're going to race her next week, you're going to have to get a little better. So it was always like the bar just kept getting like a little higher. It's like, that's good, but,
Hmm.
and that's what my inner critic does all the time. I succeed at something, but then I look at it as, yeah, but I could have done better, or look what she's doing over there. And I've come to realize that this inner critic, has been really running that show and preventing me from feeling joy and being proud of myself, which is what gives you confidence to do the next thing.
Hmm.
So it really like over time can stifle you. And I think you could do this journaling over and over again with like different thoughts and beliefs that you have.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. One thing I'd like to add too, and we talked about the neural pathways and things a little bit ago. Um, our our brains, as we all know, when we're children, your capacity is only so much. Your experience is only so much. So think about, the 4-year-old that just colored a picture for her mom, and she runs out excitedly to show her mom, and mom's busy making dinner. So mom just basically blows her off, kind of, yep, yep, and pushes her away. The capacity that 4-year-old child has at that moment is she can't decipher, she can't understand the whole situation. She's like, oh, she goes right to, well, mom doesn't love me, and that becomes an imprint. And it's that simple. It's those simple little things. So when you start thinking about childhood things, you can look back at them now and go much deeper in, now I could rationalize that as, oh, my mom was busy, and it wasn't that she didn't love me, she just didn't have time in that moment. Well, at the 4-year-old brain can't do that. They here's the stimulus, here's the outcome that she perceives, and that follows her through life. um so yeah, it's just interesting how those things form and happen, become that little voice that we start to believe, because it's a thought we think over and over. It becomes a belief, becomes an imprint, and we carry that through our adult lives until we become aware and start to learn some processes of, ooh, there's some things I need to unravel here. There's some things that I need to figure out and heal within myself. So thank you. That was great insights. Um, so let's talk about a process or two on, so we know what the symptoms are, we know what to be aware of. I know that procrastination was a thing for me, or whatever it is on the list. Um, one of the so we've kind of, at this point, we've made the inner critic out to be kind of a bad guy. But what I want to do is kind of flip that script too. And the inner critic is something to be aware of. But in order to soothe the inner critic and to heal some of those things, you want to basically befriend your inner critic, right? And one technique that I recommend to my clients is to give your inner critic an identity and teach and treat it with respect and love. And the reason for that is, let's go to the example of the 4-year-old little girl. Um, you wouldn't talk to her in that manner now. Let's say it's your 4-year-old self, right? And you're all excited about this picture you just drew. You're going to embrace her. You're going to understand at this point that she was hurt. She was hurt because of the reaction. And so you want to soothe her, and you want to love her and tell her she's safe and things are okay. And remember that she's a part of you, and you want to bring her along for the ride, right? So you want to heal that little part of you. So when you're thinking about the inner critic, a lot of times it's easy to think about it in a matter of, um, treat it as a little part of you, as your 6-year-old self, as your 10-year-old self? And how would you treat that little child if you were to meet her now? You'd embrace her. You'd want her to feel safe. And so when you can give an identity like that, that's really helpful to help you separate from the hurt of whatever that comment is, whatever that feeling is that you're feeling. Give it an identity. Understand that the inner critic voice is just trying to keep you safe, keep you collectively safe, and in that space of experience that she knew, right? And befriending her is going to help you heal. Another identity thing that you could do is kind of detach and um, for example, maybe your inner critic you think about as a barking puppy. Okay, I call mine Charlie. So when I hear that thought starts to come up, it's okay, Charlie, go lay down. I got this. It's okay. Give your inner critic or that thought an identity, because then it's you get yourself into a realm of playing versus judging, right? You're not judging yourself, you're playing with that part of you. And be kind and compassionate. Your inner critic simply just a wounded part of you and just wants to be loved, heard, and acknowledged. So when you think of a barking puppy in your back seat, it's barking and jumping up on the seat and jumping up on the seat, and you're saying, "Okay, Charlie, lay down. I got this. You're not going to drive. You can sit quietly in the back seat, but I got this." And it's really given that message of we're going to do this together. It's okay. I know you're a wounded part of me. Let me soothe you and heal you. That little wounded part just wants to be heard. And when it starts to feel like it's being heard and acknowledged and feels safe, it's gonna bark a little more quietly. That little voice is gonna get softer. And when that little voice gets softer, you're gonna be able to hear that it makes room for that little intuitive nudge or the intuition to drop in for you. So when a disempowering thought appears, talk lovingly to it. Maybe you imagine giving it a hug, saying, "Thank you, I hear you." Give it gratitude for what it's trying to tell you. And then whatever feels good to you. Go out and play. I got this, or we'll do this together. But really, again, it comes back to it wants to be acknowledged. It wants to feel safe. And it's your job to acknowledge it, love it, make it feel safe. And again, those voices over time will start to diminish. Um, and so what happens is when that voice quiets, of course, the intuition will start to be more prominent. You'll hear your intuition, you'll connect a little more frequently, a little easier with your intuition. And again, how do we know it's our inner wisdom coming through? How do we know it's our higher self? Well, it's when we feel really good, when the thought excites us, when we feel joy. Um, Again, these thoughts resonate at a much higher level, much higher energetic vibration, and that's where we want to be vibrating at, because the more that we're vibrating energetically at a higher frequency, more of that's what's going to be returned to us by our higher self, the universe, God, goddess. Those things will come back to us more frequently, and of course, what we're gonna respond with is, "Yes, please, I'll take more of that." So, we want to resonate in the happiness zone, right? And feel more joy and feel good. Our inner wisdom comes through in different ways for different people. For me, it's a gut feeling or an inner knowing. When an idea or a creative thought comes to me and it feels really good, usually it just drops in as an inner knowing. Or it's kind of like when somebody wants you to do something or go somewhere and you get that, "Ooh, that's that's not for me." You intuitively know. You don't even have to speak the words. You intuitively know, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Always follow your intuition, because it's always going to lead you down the right path. Um, let's see. And basically, when we trust, when we embrace, when we surrender, when we follow those little intuitive nudges that we get, that's really going to lead us on our right path. Because our higher self knows us better than we know us and our humanness. It knows what our big plan is for us. It's its plan for us. We don't. We're trying to control. A lot of times we're kind of trying to control the divine, right? Or the we're trying to control our situation. But when we trust and we start to take action on those little intuitive hits, that's when good things happen. That's when the good stuff starts. So um but yeah, and I guess, I mean, Sarah, I'm not sure how much time we have left, but if you want me to do the little visualization quick, we can do that or save it for
I
another
think that
time.
would be amazing. Yeah, I think that I know I personally would really love that. And I feel like it's a practice that we could take with us
Okay.
after this and repeat it. So yeah, yeah, I would love for you to guide us through a visualization.
Very good. Very good. I'll kind of set it up for you. So basically, this is a visualization practice that you can kind of do anytime, anywhere. And if you think of, I don't know if you've had anything come up tonight, a thought or anything that's come up to you that maybe was a childhood memory or something that still bothers some. What I like about this visualization is you can tailor it to whatever works for you. And what I'm going to do is take you through, let's say, an elementary school, first grade, and we'll start with that. Um, so if you're comfortable, just lower your gaze or close your eyes, and we're going to take a few deep breaths to get started, and then I'll just kind of guide you through. So deep breath in and out. Deep breath in and out. So I want you to imagine that you're in your car and you drive up to your elementary school or your grade school. And you're an adult. You're here today and you decide to go to the school. And you pull up and you park in your spot out in front. And you see yourself walking up the sidewalk to the front doors. And you see yourself walk up the steps and you hear the birds in the background and you open the door. You grab that cold metal handle and open the door, and you find yourself walking in down the hallway, past the lobby, past the office, and you turn down the hallway where your classroom was. And you get to your first grade door, and you slowly open the door. And as you open the door, the teacher kind of looks up and smiles. And you give her a smile. And then you see your 6-year-old self sitting at a desk, looking kind of sad. And you walk up to your 6-year-old self and you kneel down so that you're at her level. And you take her hand and you invite her to go for a walk with you. And you lead her out. You lead her out of the classroom and out the door and down the hall. And you go out to the front port of the front steps of the school. And here you sit down with her on the steps. And you're facing her. And you take her hands in yours and just ask her, honey, what's bothering you? What are you thinking? How can I help you? And take as long as it needs it'll intuitively come to you. The answers will be there. And you give her time to let you know, why does she feel sad or angry or frustrated? Does she feel alone? Does she feel not supported? Let the answers intuitively come. And when you feel complete, and when she feels complete and you sense that, you look at her in her eyes, at her level, and tell her whatever you want to tell her, whatever comes to your heart. I understand. You're safe. We've got this. I love you. We're good. It's not something you have to worry about. I've got this. And when that feels complete, see yourself giving your 6-year-old self a hug. Give her a really good embrace. Because at 6 years old, she didn't feel safe. And now you're there to make her feel safe. When you feel complete, you both get up and you lead her by the hand back through the door, down the hall, open the door, and the teacher smiles. Take her back to her desk and sit her down and crouch down and give her one more hug and let her know you're safe. We've got this. And when you're done, you're going to make your way back out, down the hall, down the steps, down the sidewalk, back to your car, and you gently close your car door. And you're sitting in your seat now. And you're just realizing that you just healed that little 6-year-old. And there may be more things that need to be healed. And you can do this anytime that you want. Just be open to healing, no judgment. And when you feel complete, just take a few deep breaths. When you're ready, open your eyes and wiggle your fingers and toes. Maybe give yourself a hug or stretch if you need to. Come back into the room.
Thank you, Karen. That was beautiful and profound, and it's available to us anytime. And I think it's just so amazing, the visualization of the little child that we all have inside of us. We're carrying wounded parts that didn't get healed. And the only way to heal them now is to go in and pour in the love, the attention, the acceptance, whatever it was that we didn't get at that time. And one of the things that I'll just share real quickly, and then I want to open it up to see if anyone wants to ask you some questions. But I had a real aha moment one day when I was kind of thinking about all of this. And my daughter's a lot like me. She's very driven and she works really hard at everything. And she always feels like she isn't doing it well enough or should have accomplished more by this point or whatever. And as a mom, I feel like the parent-child relationship is a lot like the divine's relationship with us. And when I saw my children born, I knew they were perfect, like perfect, perfect souls. And as they grow up, anything they do, anything that happens to them, any experiences they have, any mistakes they make, all of those are superficial and don't change the perfect soul that they are. And I realized that we are all perfect souls too.
Mhm.
And we pick up these things along the way and we add it to our backpack, and then we're weighted down by it, throughout our lives. And there's no need for that because we are perfect at the center of it all. And that is a really nice visualization practice to release some of that by giving it the healing and acceptance. So thank you for that. That's
Oh,
amazing.
you're so welcome. So welcome.